What's good, Black Star Podcast? Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Jared. Y'all, today we're going to be doing a video from Better Bachelor. Now, I know a lot of people have been trying to figure out what's been going on with the whole Russia-Ukraine war. And I believe that we finally got a reason as to why it's of American interest. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to be reviewing from Better Bachelor. And apparently, I'll be posting the link down below. And apparently, there's more than meets the eye that comes to this whole Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, let's get started.
They're sitting on $10 to $12 trillion of critical minerals in Ukraine. They could be the richest country in all of Europe. I don't want to give that money and those assets to Putin to share with China. If we help Ukraine now, they can become the best business partner we ever dreamed of. That $10 to $12 trillion of critical mineral assets could be used by Ukraine and the West.
Guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. Before we get started, if you guys like me doing these news segments and sharing things other than the usual girls are crazy, girls are nonsense, girls behaving badly kind of stuff, give me a thumbs up. You know, give me a thumbs up and a like on the video. Let me know that you like this content. If you don't and you want me to keep doing the ladies bad and staying out of, I don't know, news and world politics, hit the thumbs down. That's a very easy way to give me feedback and letting me know if you like this content or not. Because, again, this is about the only content other than The Acolyte from Disney, Disney's new Star Wars movie. Other than that being bad, it's kind of a slow news on the woke front. It's mostly kind of some more serious stuff going on. And, of course, we're in a culture war. But we might actually get into a hot war with Russia and furthermore with China. Because right now, Russia is pretty much circumnavigating all the tariffs and the impositions that the West has put on them by selling things to China, by selling them to India, and then India turning around and China turning around and then selling them to other countries. So you in the West, even though they said, oh, we're not going to buy any Russian LNG, natural gas, or we're not going to buy any petroleum from Russia, screw them. Russia sells it to China, China sells it to Europe, and the same thing. They sell it to India, and India sells it to Europe. Now you're just paying twice as much. Russia's still getting paid, and your money's going towards middlemen now. But I think because of the most recent events and everything that I hear on the TV, I think war is almost a certainty at this point. China just recently did a quote-unquote practice, a naval exercise, where they surrounded Taiwan and they encapsulated it with a blockade. Now, they didn't do it for very long, but they were just testing, and they're testing the waters to see what the United States response is. So far, the United States response is, let's put up more LGBTQ AAI2+ flags for the Rainbow Coalition and yell because kids on scooters are leaving skid marks on crosswalks that are rainbow flags. That's really what we're arguing about right now. So I think Russia looks at our leadership, and China, they're looking at our leadership and they say, these guys are weak. They're idiots. Now's the time to make our move, and we're going to shove them off of this whole Ukraine thing. And one of the things that this has been floating around, and you can say this is fake news. I don't know anymore. Maybe this is propaganda, but there's some very old gentlemen in this photo, seemingly 50, 60 years old, although these are Ukrainians and maybe Russians, so they're probably closer to the age of 30, even though they look like this. And what they're saying is that these are the recruits that they're now using in the Ukrainian conflict, Ukrainian war, because they've run out of young men, or the young men refuse to fight.
Now, I just want to interject here because, fair use. But, what in the French toast is going on. Now, this you cannot blame on Trump. You cannot blame on anybody from the past 4 years, from the past, the past presidential cabinet. You can't blame this on Trump and his cabinet. This is all under Biden. And Joker's going to talk about it in a little bit, but they're talking about a damn draft from guys my age and younger up until 18. So from 18 to 25, they're talking about a draft.
Or they've fled the country or something. But Ukraine is not doing very well. And because of this, we've already started talking about maybe putting in an automatic draft here in the United States. You don't hear that very much in the news, but they're talking about putting in the automatic draft. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can pull up that article while I think about it. Here's the story here. Congress is weighing automatic registration for a wartime draft. Registration for selective service is already mandatory, but a new proposed law will automatically sign up men between 18 and 25 years old for national draft rolls. This is from May 29th, just 11 days ago, 12 days ago. So they're very serious about this. And then when you hear Lindsey Graham, one of our senators, scumbag Republican Lindsey Graham, a warmonger, when you listen to his thoughts about why we're going to be probably putting boots on the ground from the United States, surprise, surprise. Hold on to your hats, guys. This is going to shock you. It's about money. It's all about money. Now, initially, when I guessed what they were going to do, what Europe and the United States was going to do with all these illegal migrants, is to send them to Ukraine, because once Ukraine, quote unquote, wins the war, they'll have to rebuild. And so, of course, all of our military industrial complexes, plus Raytheon, well, including Raytheon, plus Vanguard, plus BlackRock, they'll have to spend and be paid by our government hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars to rebuild Ukraine. And while they're doing that, they'll have all these jobs, and they'll need to replace all these young men that have died in war. They'll have to replace them all. And so they'll make farmers out of them, because Ukraine's got some of the most fertile soil in the world. I thought that was initially what it was. But it come to find out, instead of blood for oil, like we did in Iraq and Iran with the lie that was September 11th, 2001, now it's going to be blood for lithium and nickel and cobalt to kind of help out our new Green New Deal. Because, gosh forbid, we give these resources to Russia and ergo China. And Lindsey Graham kind of gives that away in this segment of an interview from Face the Nation. I want you to hear what he says, because basically what he's said is we are sacrificing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men so that we can make sure we can make some money. That's basically what he's saying.
What did Trump do to get the weapons flowing? He created a loan system. They're sitting on $10 to $12 trillion of critical minerals in Ukraine. They could be the richest country in all of Europe. I don't want to give that money and those assets to Putin to share with China. If we help Ukraine now, they can become the best business partner we ever dreamed of. That $10 to $12 trillion of critical mineral assets could be used by Ukraine and the West, not given to Putin and China. This is a very big deal, how Ukraine ends. Let's help them win a war we can't afford to lose. Let's find a solution to this war. But they're sitting on a gold mine. To give Putin $10 or $12 trillion of critical minerals that he will share with China is ridiculous.
But the thing is, this whole war started because Ukraine was trying to become a NATO country. Now, when the USSR was disbanded, there was an agreement. There was there was a treaty that was signed that stated that Ukraine was supposed to stay neutral because it's a border country to Russia. Ukraine, considering becoming a NATO country because of Zelensky, that alone is the reason why this whole entire war got started. Plus, Russia just got tired of being basically pushed around. So when this war started, everybody started with these tariffs on Russia, and it didn't hurt them much, really. Because they were still selling to China, they were selling to all sorts of other countries. Through a Chinese-Russian treaty. So Russia would sell China their goods. China would then sell Russia's materials. Russia would still be making money. Our dumbasses, the U.S., decided to put tariffs on Russia, and other countries in the world didn't like what Russia was doing, but they took their tails and went back to Russia because they could not afford cheap Russian oil and cheap Russian goods. Now you have this war, and now coming to find out, there's $12 trillion worth of cobalt, nickel, and lithium that is sitting in Ukraine right now. Now we just really finding out why this whole entire war started in the first fucking place. How much do you want to bet that the Israeli-Hamas war is about resources too? There's some type of resources that was detected in Gaza. Just speculating here. There was some type of resources detected in Gaza, and Hamas found out about it, or Israel found out about it, and they launched an attack, creating this war. Or, like we all think, the Israel-Hamas war is being fought over territory. See, the problem is the U.S. relies on too many outside countries for supplies. Chinese steel, Russian steel, Chinese, Russian, and Saudi Arabian oil. China, as far as technology goods. And we also outsource our manufacturing to different countries. You barely find anything made in America. So you tell me, is this about resources or this is about power? Because as far as I'm concerned, the U.S. really doesn't have any power. Only thing we got is our military force. As far as power and respect, nobody respects the U.S. Well, our border is literally open right now. It is a floodgate right now. You have Saudi Arabians, Russians, Ukrainians, Chinese, Haitians, Mexicans, Venezuelans, Colombians, Ecuadorians, Brazilians. You have all sorts of different people coming across the United States southern border. Now, let me ask you a question. Out of those people, how many people do you think are sleeper agents? How many different sleeper cells have come into the country and dispersed across the country to different points in the United States? We gonna speak some facts here. How many different places do you think that these people have went and are waiting for their orders from their particular home countries? Remember that video I made called Espionage. That is what I was referring to. Now we have a reason. Now we have all of this different shit. Now let me ask you this question. Say for instance 5,000 to 10,000 Russian agents, 5,000 to 10,000 to 20,000 Chinese agents came across the southern border due to it being open. That's probably more than 35,000 sleeper agents that got into the U.S. without proper clearance and proper vetting. Tactically, the United States is a territory that is not going to be easily taken because we have allies up north and allies down south through Mexico. Okay? Now, let me put a little bit of knowledge on you. If you have a weak border with no proper vetting, you could have agents coming in that are not being vetted, that can exploit the chaos, get into places that they can't be found or easily found. And when they get the order, they can hit specific tactical targets that is critical United States infrastructure. Power grids, gas stations, fuel depots, military targets, military installations, radar, infrastructure, internet infrastructure, satellite systems. There's too many ways that this shit can go wrong, and it will go wrong in the end. Because we have a weak president, and this president is going to be the cause of a downfall of the United States due to his miscalculations, his misdeeds, and his mistrust to the public. Now, I'm going to say this. His son was convicted of 3 felony counts of having a gun under a controlled substance. So you tell me what's going to happen. I'll wait.
Oh boy, don't you love it when our government accidentally tells us the truth? It's all about the money. It's not about stopping Putin because he's invading a country that we want to be part of NATO. It's not that he's taking over a country that because of its citizenry, we want to protect the citizens and they should have the right to be free. No, it's none of that. It's about the money. And he just flat out says it. $12 trillion worth of minerals. And you know that if Ukraine gets turned into dirt and then the United States rebuilds them, they're going to go in. That's why they're so eager to spend billions of dollars. What's $100 billion when we stand to make $12 trillion? And so they just basically come clean and they say, hey, you know what? We got to win this war, and then we're going to go in and be business partners with Ukraine, which means the United States will likely milk Ukraine dry. We'll keep 90% of it, 95% of it. The well-to-dos and the upper crust of Ukraine will get to keep 5%, and the people will probably get to keep basically nothing. And if you don't think that's the way it's going to go, I got a Kuwait to sell you. I mean, this is the way that these things go. And our government's basically saying that. So everybody that flew those little Ukrainian flags and saying, oh, you know, we got to make sure that Russia doesn't take, it's all about the money. They're putting these men into a meat grinder just so we can get our hands on these minerals. And what do the minerals have to do? It's going to be, it's going to be for solar panels and electric cars and green infrastructure and all this other stuff. Because that's where the ideology of our government is. And once again, we're going off to war, and they want to spill probably Americans' blood as well as Europeans over money. That's what this all boils down to. So why do I think this is going to happen? Well, I think, number one, it's going to happen because America really wants that $12 trillion worth of assets. It's going to make a lot of people very, very rich, a lot of companies very, very rich. I mean, that's half of our national debt. That is an amazing amount of money when you really think of it. And they're scared to death that if Russia and China get that, they will be the next global powers. And it's true, they probably will be. But will they? I don't know. Will they be that much worse than we're being right now? This is from menafn.com. And just recently, the United States has given Ukraine long-range missiles, and it's not to defend themselves, it's to attack deep into Russia. And again, this is just from a week ago or so. And now Ukraine's starting to strike deep into the heart of Russia. But here's what's interesting. Their attack targets. What are the Ukrainians attacking? Well, they say right here, on May 23rd, drones launched from Ukraine hit a Russian strategic radar station in Armavir, Russia. This is not the first time that nuclear facilities in Russia have been targeted and hit, but it represents a significant escalation that could trigger Russian retaliation on NATO suppliers or even a nuclear response by Russia. The core of Russian angst about Ukraine is that the country would become a NATO base for nuclear missiles. It isn't clear if the attack was entirely on Ukraine's initiative or whether Ukraine's NATO partners were involved.
Now, this is going to be something that needs to be really talked about. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about this, but Russia called America an enemy. Now let me pull up that the first post. Let's see this.
Now let's take a look at the US. It has a new problem on its hands. Russia has now officially called the United States an enemy nation. This came from the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov. Let me read out the translation of what he said. And we are an enemy country for them, much like they are for us. Again, that was the Kremlin spokesperson, and this is the first time he's said enemy, because it's not something to be said lightly. Now, you know that Washington and Moscow have never seen eye to eye. They've been on opposite sides in a number of conflicts, most recently in Ukraine. But through 2 years of the Ukraine war, Moscow went out of its way to avoid calling the US an enemy state. Just look at Peskov again. Barely 3 months ago, he said that the US was not the enemy, that Russia did not have any anti-American sentiments. But that has changed now. Why? Perhaps because of last week's escalation. Last week, the United States gave Ukraine a green light to strike Russian territory using American weapons. Ukraine has already begun doing so. They're using American weapons to strike inside Russia, and Russia is furious. Putin says Ukraine is striking Russian territory with the help of Western specialists.
The missile strikes against Russia are done by the Western specialists. We have no illusions about that. What must we do in response? First of all, we will improve our air defense systems to destroy the missiles. Secondly, we think that if someone thinks it is possible to supply such weapons to a combat zone to strike at our territory and create problems for us, why do we not have the right to supply our weapons of the same class to those regions of the world where there will be strikes on the sensitive facilities of those countries that are doing this against Russia?
You heard what he said.
Now, I'm no fan of Putin. But I'm going to say this. As an American, I do not condone this, and I do not condone my tax dollars going towards a war that should not have involved us in the first fucking place. That's first. Second off, if you keep on sending weapons over to a foreign country, what makes you think that that specific country that you're trying to attack is not going to seize the opportunity to gather sensitive American-made weapon systems, reverse engineer them, and build their own weapons that are way better, that have better capabilities than our weapons? And third, why on God's green earth would you send Americans to a foreign combat zone that does not involve us, and nor should it have involved us? See, at this point, we're going to have to start looking at the government as a whole. What is their motive? Why are they plotting? Why are they doing this? And can we stop this before it turns into a nuclear winter type of situation? I'm not dying for money, for over fucking money. I'm going to say that right now. I'm not going to die over money that was made, that caused us to go into debt because of ignorant ass politicians that have no skin in the game. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. I'm not dying for you. I'm sorry. I'm not dying for you. And nor would I want any other American to die over politics. I'm sorry. Most politicians don't know what the fuck they're doing up in Washington. None of them do. And I will be a damn idiot to go fight in a war that I pretty much don't know anything about. All this talk about die for the American cause. Man, bullshit. You ain't dying for no American cause. You are dying for politicians to line their pockets for money. That's the only reason why this shit's getting out of hand like this.
Basically, Putin has threatened to turn the tables, to send Russian weapons to Western enemies, long-range weapons that could strike sensitive facilities in the West. And this means that Western enemies could get the ability to strike them at will. It would be a security nightmare for the Western nations that are helping Ukraine.
In the end, if we see that these countries become involved in a war against us, what they are doing makes them directly involved in a war against the Russian Federation, we reserve the right to act the same way. Overall, it leads to some serious problems.
That was Putin's threat. But he isn't just content with that. He's also going for a show of force. Russia is sending combat vessels to the Caribbean Sea, to America's doorstep. Russia will participate in naval exercises in the Caribbean, along with Cuba and possibly Venezuela. Russian aircraft may also be deployed in the region and won't stop there. Here is what US officials have said, and I'm quoting: We anticipate that this summer Russia will conduct heightened naval and air activity near the United States. These actions will culminate in a global Russian naval exercise this fall. Now, Russia regularly conducts drills in America's backyard, but this time they're expected to be quote-unquote heightened. And the drills will continue for weeks, if not months. This is clearly muscle flexing. Russia wants to show that even while it is busy with Ukraine, it has firepower to spare, and that it can hurt any enemy anywhere in the world. All of this posturing is reminiscent of a different era, of the Cold War, when Russia and the US were constantly on the brink of war, and the rest of us were hoping to not be caught in the nuclear fallout. The world does not need to go back to the Cold War era. Russia and the West need to de-escalate and let the cooler heads prevail.
I'm going to say this. Now, let's talk about critical infrastructure. Let's talk about it. What military bases are in Florida? So we have, good God in the morning. So we have, that's 10. So we have over 20 military bases in Florida. How many military bases are in Louisiana? 4. 4, 5, 10, 12. 12 from the look of it. How many military suppliers are in South Carolina? South Carolina has over 80 defense contractors. Yeah. So there's, and to be honest with you, I think there's a F-16 factory in South Carolina. I actually believe, I believe that. Hold on, let me see something. F-16 factory in South Carolina. Yep, Lockheed Martin's Greenville, South Carolina facility is home to the F-16 Fighting Falcon production line, and known as the global home of the F-16. This facility also provides maintenance, repair, overhaul, and modification services for military and civil aircraft, including the F-16. So yeah, Lockheed Martin, Greenville operations. So major services include at this particular plant: final assembly and checkout of aircraft production, heavy modification, repair, maintenance, and overhaul, phased deport maintenance, midlife upgrades, full interior refurbishment, aviation and mission systems upgrades, and so on forth and so on. And the F-16 is a very prominent aircraft that is still in production today. Now, they're in the Cuban coast. They're off. They're supposed to be off of They're supposed to be off the coast of Cuba. Now let's see what Cuba is. Cuba.
Here's the definition of Cuban.
Not
Relating to
Cuban. Cuba, stupid. Damn you retarded ass. Cuba. Literally, Cuba is right fucking here. Cuba is literally almost, what's it, like 100, 200 miles away from the off the Florida coast. So they're going to be basically almost right here. This is literally close as shit to me. And you've got hypersonic jets, hypersonic missiles. So you've got all this right here. All this right here that could be a potential danger because of these idiots in the White House, not White House, the idiots in politics.
Here's the thing that freaks me out a little bit. It consists of 2 long-range phased array radars for warning of a nuclear attack. The site is in southern Russia in Krasnodar Krai and is on the grounds of Baranovsky Air Base situated there. One of the radars covers the southwest and the other faces southeast. This radar site replaces earlier strategic radar sites in Ukraine that were abandoned around 2012 and another no longer operational in Azerbaijan. What is the point for, if this is just a conflict across the border, if this is just a small, I mean, it's a war, obviously, but if the United States isn't really involved and we're just, we're just giving Ukraine supplies, but we're not directing their attacks, why would they attack a nuclear radar site when Ukraine doesn't have any nukes? So if you think about this, okay, Russia's fear is the United States is going to put nukes in Ukraine. And back in the Cuban Missile Crisis, the United States wanted to put nukes in Turkey. And both times Russia said, no, that's too close. Or if you're going to do that, fine, we're just going to put nukes in Cuba. We're just going to put some on your doorstep. And we had this huge standoff in the 1960s. And it was the Missile Cuban Crisis. And it was a very scary time. And here, now all of a sudden, Ukraine's going after Russian radar that detects a weapon that Ukrainians don't have. They say US B-52 bombers, F-22 and F-35 aircraft, and the new long-range B-3 strike bomber are stealth platformers and are all nuclear mission capable. So now by taking out the radar stations, now they're saying, hey, Russia has 10 strategic radars to protect the country. Will you stop with the pop-ups? Jeez. Sorry. I got this little pop-up that keeps popping up here, distracting me. They say Russia has 10 strategic radars to protect the country. These radars date from 2017. They have a range of about 6,000 kilometers or 3,700 miles and are known as Vorozhen. I almost sound like a Klingon there for a second. Vorozhen. The radars are designed to detect cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and attacks from space. These radars are linked to the new S-500 air defense system and other air defenses. The drones fired at the radar flew 1,800 kilometers. This is well beyond Ukraine's surveillance capabilities. Although the radar sites could have been located through commercial satellite imagery, the locations of Russia's strategic radar sites are public information. And they partially destroyed AR-3 drone Armavir. So this is a huge escalation by the United States. Well, shortly after this is just from 4 days ago, Russia now has officially declared the U.S. an enemy, or an enemy state, for the first time amid straining ties over Ukraine. They said amid straining ties with our Washington over Ukraine, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov called the United States an enemy state. Russian President Vladimir Putin's press secretary Peskov's remarks come after former American intelligence officer Scott Ritters claimed that he was prevented from visiting St. Petersburg and his passport was confiscated by border officials. Responding to it, Peskov told reporters that the latest manifestation of rabid campaign to stop Americans from communicating with Russia would be only understandable if the move had any connection to his former alliance status. We are now an enemy country for them, just as they are for us, he told reporters. According to Agentstov, a reputable Russian investigative website, neither Peskov nor Putin have ever referred to the United States other than unfriendly countries as Russia's enemies. So now you've got basically Russia saying, look, we see you're helping Ukraine. We know you're giving them aid. We know they've got tanks of yours. We know that you're sending people over there to help them fire some of these missile batteries that they have no training on, and it takes 10 months to train these guys, yet somehow they're magically getting fired. So we know you've got people in the country firing on us. You're now officially an enemy. And because of the way that you're helping Ukraine attack us, we basically are looking at you as the aggressors through Ukraine, because now they see what's going on. It'd be no different. It'd be no different than what would be a good example if China was at war or fighting Mexico to get right on our doorstep, here's a better way to put it. It'd be like China is entering Mexico into like a NATO, like an alliance, and then they're going to put nukes in Mexico right on our doorstep. The Americans would be like, no way, that's not going to happen. We are not going to allow that. Well, that's what's going on with Russia right now. And so Putin's like, look, we know what's going on. This is war, and it's game on. And they've responded in the last 24 hours. They say Russian warships, including nuclear sub and a missile frigate, will arrive in Cuba next week. Well, I got news for you. That was 3 days ago. Ta-da, they're here. They just arrived. So now we have Russian naval ships, nuclear-powered submarines, probably some of which are nuclear capable, or they have these hypersonic missiles that can have a range as far as South Carolina in the United States from Cuba, which puts all of Florida, the east coast of Texas, Louisiana, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama. That puts a lot of states in range of an attack from them. They say 3 Russian Navy ships and a nuclear-powered submarine will arrive at Port of Havana for an official visit next week. The Cuban Armed Forces said in a statement Thursday, confirming the military exercise first disclosed by U.S. officials on Wednesday. The Cuban Revolutionary Armed Forces said the Russian missile frigate Admiral Gorshkov, the nuclear sub Kazan, the oil tanker Pashin, and the salvage tug Nikolai Chiker will arrive on June 12th and stay for a week. The Cuban military said the visit by the Russian Navy ships is part of the friendly relations between the two countries. Complies with international law, does not pose a security threat to the region because none of the ships carry nuclear weapons. Well, okay. So let's put a pin in that. Okay? They might be technically correct. The 3 Russian Navy ships and the submarine that are coming, that they've announced that are visiting, they may not be nuclear capable. However, the 6 submarines that might have been following right along with these ships or following underneath the ships, so you can't detect them on radar or sonar, for that matter. Maybe they can. I don't know. But who says they don't have something in them? Who says they don't have stealth-type subs? Who says they're not just coming in and getting a feel for things or dropping some things off? It's something to think about, and it's something to worry about, that you now have China doing exercises around Taiwan. I think they know Biden isn't capable. I think China's going to make a move before our elections. I'm pretty sure that's going to happen right around the time of our elections, because it'll be chaos, number one. Number two, if he makes it a big enough deal, he knows the Democrats are going to use this as a reason to postpone elections, because now we're in a wartime situation, which means Trump does not get elected. It means President Potato Head stays in there as the commander-in-chief. All around, that is a win for China. It's also a win for Russia. And how is the United States, with their arrogance and their cockiness, how are they going to respond? I think at this point, the United States hasn't admitted it yet. But I think, when you get into these, this is supposedly the fourth turning. I think when you get into it, with the drone technology and how quickly things have changed, with the capabilities of our current services, which they're not on their A game,
Yeah, when you got service members out here waving around flags and shit, talking about LGBT, when you got them painting the fucking military helmet rainbow colors, talking about no, I ain't gonna say it. You can already probably guess what I was gonna say. When you got all that shit going on, yeah, our military is weak. But I'm gonna put a fork in this. You guys can go watch this video. I'm gonna post the link down below again. Shout out to Joker. Yo, this shit's getting crazy. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Thank you guys for listening. Bye, guys. Also, if you guys want to support the podcast you can send me a cash app at $skyrocket04. And also, if you guys have any suggestions for a microphone, a mic, because I know my mic is echoey, please send me please send me a suggestion, or you can send some cash to donate to get the new mic. In either way, anything is good. Anyways, like, share, subscribe, channel, support the podcast on Spotify.com. I'll see you guys on the flip side. Thank you guys for listening. Bye, guys.